It was just a simple bump against the table that changed my destiny. Nathan's notebook tipped over, revealing a screen I wasn't meant to see. His email opened with the subject "plans for after she leaves" left no room for doubt. I froze, my blood turning to ice as I watched messages between my husband and Victoria. His coworker, Emma, still hasn't suspected anything. 3 years in and she still thinks we stayed late at the office reviewing projects, Nathan wrote. 3 years, our entire marriage reduced to a lie. My hands trembled as I scrolled down, uncovering hundreds of messages between them. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. When I heard Nathan's car in the garage, I closed the notebook and went back to the kitchen, pretending everything was normal. The man who swore he loved me walked in smiling, kissed my forehead, and asked about dinner as if he weren't secretly destroying our life. That night, he went out for drinks with the guys, Brian and Tyler, his loyal sidekicks. I waited until he left and then searched through everything: emails, messages, photos. I found the whole plan. After my 35th birthday, Nathan would ask for a divorce. All of our assets were already being gradually transferred to an account I didn't know about. I was about to confront him when I heard voices in the backyard. From the kitchen window, I saw Nathan, Victoria, Brian, and Tyler talking and laughing loudly. I quietly moved toward the back door. So it's decided, on her birthday, we do that prank. We take Emma out for a walk, stop at that abandoned gas station on the road, and pretend the car broke down. You call me with some emergency. I say I need to take care of something, and you pick me up. She stays there, without a phone, with nothing, for a few hours. When I go back to get her, she'd be so shaken she agreed to the divorce without a fuss. The laughter that followed broke my heart. Victoria kissed Nathan, saying she could hardly wait to live with him. At that moment, something inside me died, and a ruthless woman, one they'd never recognize, was born. I smiled at Nathan, prepared his favorite breakfast, and pretended not to notice when he made up excuses to go out. Meanwhile, I meticulously planned every detail of my escape. First, I scanned all my important documents: my birth certificate, my university diploma, my financial records. I saved everything to a new email account I created under a fake name. Then, I started withdrawing small sums of money with every grocery purchase, $20 here, $50 there, so nothing would raise suspicion. I called my bank under the pretext of an anniversary trip and requested an additional credit card that arrived within a week. I hid it inside the cover of a book Nathan would never read: Finances for Independent Women. One researched living in Europe, especially France. I'd always dreamed of living in Paris, but Nathan always said it was a silly dream. I downloaded language apps and began secretly practicing my French while he slept. On the eve of my birthday, I packed a small bag with essentials and hid it in a secret compartment I made at the back of the laundry closet. I put my family jewels in a discreet case along with my passport. When Nathan mentioned the surprise outing for my birthday, I feigned excitement and gratitude. Inside, I was counting the minutes until I could put my plan into action. Close your eyes, dear. I have a surprise for you. Nathan's voice sounded so fake that I wondered how I'd never noticed before. We had been in the car for almost an hour, with Brian and Tyler following us in another vehicle. When we stopped, I smelled old gasoline and all. I opened my eyes to the desolate scene of an abandoned gas station. Looks like the car is having trouble, Nathan said, forcing a note of concern. I'm going to check the engine. I got out of the car, pretending to be confused. Nathan's phone rang, a prearranged signal. Work emergency, I have to go now. Brian will pick me up. Just stay here, and I'll try to be back soon. I watched them walk away, waving fake concern. As soon as the car disappeared down the road, I grabbed my hidden cell phone from the small purse I had brought with me. Nathan had confiscated my official phone as part of the plan. I called an Uber to the nearest pawn shop. Mr. Wilson, a gentleman with graying hair, examined my jewels with seasoned eyes. They're authentic. I can offer $15,000. I accepted right away. While counting the money, he looked at me curiously. Running from someone, aren't you? Be careful. He handed me a small can of pepper spray along with the cash. On the house, from there, another Uber took me straight to the airport. I bought a ticket to Paris with a layover in London using cash for the first leg. While waiting to board, I blocked Nathan on all social media and sent an email to my parents saying I needed some time alone. When the plane took off, I cried quietly, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Behind me was a life built on lies. Ahead was a future I would build on my own. Paris welcomed me with a light drizzle and a gray sky. I stayed at a small hotel in the 15th arrondissement, away from the tourist spots. With my basic French, I managed to get by during the first few weeks. I rented a tiny studio near the Vaugirard station. The place barely had room for a bed and a small table, but the windows overlooked an inner courtyard with an old chestnut tree that reminded me every day that I was alive and free. My routine quickly took shape, waking up at 6, studying French intensively for 3 hours, then heading out to look for work. Rejections came fast. Your French isn't good enough. You need a work permit. You lack recent experience. After a month of searching, I saw an ad for Lambert Financial looking for a bilingual receptionist. During the interview, my French faltered several times, but I mentioned my accounting background and my knack for numbers. We need someone to answer calls and manage the reception, not a bookkeeper, said Charlotte, my future supervisor, coldly. Even so, I got the job. In the first few days, I made some embarrassing mistakes. I transferred calls to the wrong people and pronounced French names so badly that the clients laughed. Charlotte rarely hid her irritation, but I stayed determined, studying even more. At night, in my tiny apartment, I created spreadsheets and developed systems to improve the reception's organization. Gradually, I managed to establish a working routine. Daniel Lambert, the owner, began to notice my dedication. 6 months later, my French was considerably better. Charlotte now occasionally invited me to lunch and even gave tips to improve my pronunciation. During one of those meals, she confessed, "I thought you wouldn't last 2 weeks. Americans usually give up." Then came the opportunity that changed everything. One ordinary day, while I was sorting invoices, I noticed a discrepancy in the numbers from a major client. I recalculated 3 times to be sure. There was a €200,000 error in the projections. I hesitated, unsure if I should mention it. Summoning my courage, I knocked on Mr. Lambert's door. "Sir, sorry to bother you, but I found something in the reports from Dumont Industries that you might want to check out." He looked at me in surprise, grabbing the spreadsheets I had prepared. His expression shifted from skepticism to shock as he examined the numbers. My goodness, how did no one notice this? He immediately called in the finance department to verify. Everyone was stunned. The following week, I was called into his office. I expected a formal thank you, maybe even a small bonus. Instead, he offered me a position as a financial analysis assistant. "We need someone with your eye for detail. Charlotte can find another receptionist." That's how Emma Thompson, my new name after shedding Nathan's surname, began her true transformation. Atlantic Meridian Shipping, a powerhouse in international maritime transport, had hired Lambert to review its European operations. As the lead analyst, I was tasked with presenting the preliminary results to the CEO. I arrived at the impressive Atlantic building on Avenue Montaigne 15 minutes early. The receptionist led me to the conference room on the top floor, where Paris laid out majestically before us. "Miss Thompson, Robert Carter," a deep voice surprised me. I turned to see a tall man with graying hair at his temples and intense blue eyes. Unlike the executives I was used to, he didn't exude arrogance, just a calm, quiet confidence. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Carter. I shook his hand firmly. I brought the preliminary reports you asked for. For the next 2 hours, we dove into the financial complexities of the company. To my surprise, Carter was following every detail, asking incisive questions that showed deep understanding. He wasn't just a figurehead CEO, he actually understood his business. When I got to the results on the Asian operations, I noticed an anomaly. The routes through the Malacca Strait are operating with significantly lower margins than those through the Suez Canal, despite being shorter, I explained, showing some comparative graphs I had prepared. Looking deeper, I found that you are being charged insurance rates that are 30% higher in that region, even though there haven't been any incidents in the past 3 years. Carter looked at me with renewed interest. None of our internal analysts picked that up. Insurers take advantage of the perceived high risk in that area, but the data shows that for ships of your size, with modern technology, the actual risk is comparable to routes in the Mediterranean. I presented a detailed spreadsheet I had created. By renegotiating these contracts, you could save around 12 million euros annually. When I finished the presentation, a silence hung in the room. Carter leaned back in his chair, studying me with an unreadable look. Ms. Thompson, would you join me for lunch? I have some ideas about your analysis that I'd like to discuss in more detail. At a stylish restaurant by the Seine, our conversation naturally shifted from financial analysis to other topics. Carter, who insisted I call him Robert, had an insatiable curiosity. He asked about my background, my views on European markets, even my opinion on French literature, discovering that we both shared a love for Camus. How does an American with a talent for numbers end up in Paris? He asked casually. My heart raced. I had crafted a believable story, rehearsed countless times. I was looking for a fresh start, my marriage failed, and Paris has always been my dream. He nodded without pushing for details. Paris has that transformative effect. I came here seeking change over a decade ago. At the end of lunch, Robert surprised me with an offer. Atlantic is expanding its European operations and needs someone with your perspective. Would you consider a position as a consultant for our finance division? I know you're happy at Lambert, but I can guarantee that our work would be more exciting. I asked for a few days to think it over. In truth, my decision was already made. Something about Atlantic Meridian, and maybe about Robert Carter, was calling me to a new chapter. First, subtly, small fluctuations in the stock exchanges, a gradual increase in interest rates, and trade tensions among world powers. At Atlantic Meridian, I watched these signs with growing apprehension. During the 8 months since I accepted Robert's offer, I had become responsible for analyzing market trends and identifying investment opportunities. Our professional relationship evolved into a partnership built on mutual trust. Robert valued my insights and often implemented my recommendations without question. On a cold January morning in 2023, the storm that had been building finally hit the markets. Financial indices plummeted and panic spread. Companies began selling off assets to preserve liquidity. Atlantic's board called an emergency meeting. In the conference room, the tension was palpable. Senior executives argued heatedly over options. Most advocated for a conservative approach, scaling back operations, selling off less profitable subsidiaries, and focusing only on the most stable markets. Atlantic has survived previous crises and will survive this one if we are prudent, the CFO, Richard Williams, argued. We should focus on preserving capital and wait for the storm to pass. Robert looked at me from the other side of the table. Emma, you're unusually quiet. What's your take? All eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath. I respectfully disagree with the defensive strategy. A murmur ran through the room. This isn't a typical liquidity crisis. The underlying economic fundamentals remain strong. What we're seeing is panic, not structural collapse. I walked over to the projector and connected my laptop, displaying graphs I had prepared during the early hours of the morning. I analyzed previous crises in 2008, 2001, 1987. In each case, the companies that came out stronger weren't the ones that pulled back, but those that strategically expanded when quality assets were undervalued. I showed a list of competitors and complementary companies whose shares had plummeted far more than their fundamentals warranted. North Sea Shipping is being traded at a third of its real value. Pacific Routes has the best port facilities in Asia, but is on the brink of bankruptcy because of short-term debts it can't refinance. If we acquire these companies now, not only will we survive the crisis, but we'll come out dominating routes that we'd never have access to under normal circumstances. A heavy silence fell over the room. Richard was the first to speak. This is crazy. You're suggesting we increase our exposure just when the market is crashing. It's a recipe for disaster. Robert raised his hand, silencing the CFO. How much capital would we need to mobilize for this plan? Approximately 1.8 billion euros. We'd have to liquidate some conservative investments and raise additional debt. The ensuing discussion was intense. Several directors voiced skepticism, while some partially supported the plan. Robert listened to everyone intently, taking notes. After 3 hours, he finally spoke. We're going to go with Emma's plan. Not entirely, we can't risk everything, but we'll allocate 1.2 billion towards strategic acquisitions. Richard, work on the financing options. Emma, I want execution details within 48 hours. In the following weeks, I worked almost non-stop. Atlantic acquired 5 smaller companies and bought significant stakes in 3 larger competitors. The market remained volatile, with many criticizing our reckless strategy. Internally, some executives even speculated about how long Robert would survive as CEO after the Carter-Thompson disaster. The pressure was immense. Robert and I spent nights analyzing every market move, refining strategies, and adjusting forecasts. During those work sessions, I saw a side of him few ever did: vulnerable, reflective, occasionally doubting his own decisions. In those moments, I found the strength to reaffirm my conviction in our plan. By September 2023, the first signs of recovery emerged. The acquisitions we'd made began generating synergies beyond our most optimistic projections. When the market finally stabilized at the end of that year, Atlantic Meridian had transformed into the 3rd largest shipping company in the world, dominating key routes that had once been nearly monopolized by competitors. At the year-end celebration dinner, Robert raised his glass in a toast. To the courage to swim against the current, he looked directly at me. To Emma Thompson, whose vision transformed not only our company but the entire global shipping industry. The applause was deafening. In that moment, I realized I had finally found my place in the world. I talked about my accounting background, my passion for numbers, and my dream of living in Paris. I avoided details about Nathan, merely mentioning that my ex-husband and I had incompatible visions of life. In March 2024, we traveled together to Singapore to finalize the merger with Pacific Routes. During the 12-hour flight on the corporate jet, we talked about everything except work. At one point, he mentioned an impressionist art exhibition he would visit when he returned to Paris. Monet is my favorite, I remarked. His ability to capture light has always fascinated me. There's an incredible private collection in Giverny, near Monet's house. The curator is an old college friend of mine. Would you like to join me when we're back? I agreed without hesitation. That outing was the first of many. Concerts at the Philharmonic, dinners in small restaurants away from the tourist traps, strolls through the Jardin du Luxembourg on Sunday mornings. We never labeled those meetings as dates. We were two colleagues enjoying each other's company outside of work. The turning point came during an unexpected storm in Antibes. We were visiting a shipyard where Atlantic was building a new fleet of container ships. A torrential downpour caught us during the inspection, forcing us to take shelter in a seaside cafe. Sitting by the window, Watching the violent waves, Robert suddenly asked, "Do you believe in second chances, Emma?" The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Second chances in life, in people? For a long time after my divorce, I convinced myself that meaningful relationships weren't for me. That work would be enough. My heart raced, and it isn't. No, he took my hand on the table. It isn't since you walked into that conference room 2 years ago. The cafe was nearly empty. Rain drummed against the windows. For a moment, all the walls I had built around my heart felt fragile. I'm scared. I admitted my marriage destroyed me in ways I never fully shared. I'm not asking you to tell me everything right now. I just want to know if there's room for us to explore what's between us. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who admire each other seeing if there could be something more. I looked out the window at the stormy sea, which slowly calmed as the rain passed. It was a perfect reflection of my own journey. Yes, I finally replied. I believe in second chances. Our relationship grew naturally after that day. Unlike Nathan, Robert never tried to control my every move or decision. We had passionate debates over business strategies, openly expressing our disagreements, always ending with mutual respect. When he invited me to spend a week on his billionaire yacht, I agreed on one condition: we'd continue working remotely for a few hours a day. He laughed, remarking that only I would turn a romantic vacation into a work retreat. That's why we work so well together, he said, kissing my forehead. Neither of us thinks we need to be someone else to please the other. During that week at sea, cruising along the Italian coast, something fundamental changed between us. Under the starry Amalfi Coast sky, Robert told me about his failures, his insecurities, his regrets. In return, I revealed more about my past, not the whole truth about Nathan, but enough for him to understand the scars I carried. On the last night aboard, while we dined on the deck by candlelight, Robert took my hand. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. The ability to trust, to plan for a future beyond the next fiscal quarter. His eyes reflected the stars as he knelt before me. Emma Thompson, you transformed my life. Will you transform my last name too? The tears I shed when I said yes weren't just tears of happiness, they were tears of deep redemption. From the woman abandoned at a gas station, I had become someone who chose her own destiny, and now I chose to share it with someone who saw my true worth. We opted for an intimate ceremony with only 50 guests, Robert's children, a few Atlantic Meridian executives who had become close friends, and a small circle of people I'd met in Paris. Daniel Lambert and Charlotte represented my recent past. None of my American connections were invited. On the morning of the wedding, as the makeup artist put the finishing touches on me, I reflected on the journey that brought me here. 3 years earlier, I was Emma Reynolds, a betrayed, humiliated woman abandoned at a gas station. Now I was becoming Emma Carter, a respected executive and the partner of a man who valued both my intellect and my heart. Robert waited at the makeshift altar among the vineyards. Seeing him smile, I felt a wave of gratitude. Not just for finding him, but for the strength I discovered within myself as I rebuilt my life. You're stunning, he whispered as I approached. His look conveyed admiration, not possession, a key difference from Nathan. Our vows were simple and sincere. I promised honesty, partnership, and respect. I vowed to value his independence while we built a shared life. In his words to me, Robert mentioned how he admired my resilience, even without knowing its full extent. You taught me that restarting isn't a weakness, but the greatest strength, he said, bringing tears to my eyes. After the ceremony, during the reception, Catherine, Robert's daughter, raised her glass in a toast. When Daddy said he was getting remarried, I have to admit I was skeptical. Then I met Emma and understood. She doesn't try to replace anyone or fit into a predetermined role. She carved out her own space in his life, just as she created her own space in the corporate world with intelligence, determination, and authenticity, Her words touched me deeply. For so long, I had tried to be the person Nathan wanted me to be. With Robert, I was simply myself, the strongest, most confident version that emerged from the ashes of that failed marriage. Our honeymoon in Greece was a perfect mix of rest and planning for the future. Between ocean swims in secluded bays and dinners in tavernas by the sea, we discussed Atlantic's expansion into new markets and my vision for restructuring the finance department. Most couples leave work at home during their honeymoon. Robert teased while we pored over projection spreadsheets under the Santorini sun. We're not like most couples, I replied, kissing him. We love what we do almost as much as we love each other. When we returned to Paris, we faced our first major decision as a couple: where to live. Robert had a magnificent apartment near Park Monceau, while I kept my modest studio. The solution came unexpectedly when we found a property for sale on the Ile Saint-Louis, an old apartment with views of the Seine and Notre Dame. This place has history, just like us, Robert commented as we inspected the century-old wooden floors and the original moldings. We can preserve its character while creating something new. During the 3 months of renovations, we worked side by side with architects and designers. Robert respected my choices even when they differed from his, always finding compromises that satisfied both of us. What a contrast to Nathan, who would decide everything on his own. From the wallpaper to the furniture in our home. In September, we moved into our new home. I brought only a few items from my old apartment, mainly books and a few pieces of art I'd collected during my years in Paris. The past weighed less and less. Professionally, I assumed the role of Director of Strategy at Atlantic Meridian, overseeing both financial operations and expansion decisions. Some of the more traditional executives initially questioned my promotion, hinting at nepotism. Robert handled it gracefully. Bring your qualifications up in a meeting with her. If you still have doubts afterwards, come talk to me. No one ever did. During this period, I officially changed my name to Emma Thompson Carter. The Thompson, which I adopted during my escape, remained part of my new identity, a reminder of the path I had taken. The Carter symbolized not just my marriage, but the genuine partnership we had built. In December, we hosted our first Christmas party at our new apartment. Watching Robert interact with our guests, I felt a peace I'd never imagined possible. He caught me looking and crossed the room to whisper, "What are you thinking about with that mysterious smile?" About how life takes unexpected turns and how I'm so happy that you are my present and my future. That night, lying in our bed, Robert mentioned plans for expanding into North America. We'll need to evaluate potential partners in several cities, including Boston, New York, and Chicago. My stomach tightened at the thought of returning to the United States, so close to my past. But I realized I was no longer afraid. Emma Carter wasn't running away. She faced challenges head-on. "When do we leave?" I asked, surprising him with my enthusiasm. In that moment, I understood that my transformation was complete. I was no longer defined by what I had lost or left behind, but by what I had built and what I would continue to create. As the Director of Strategy, I was leading the final negotiations, reviewing proposals from various investors interested in joining the deal. "We have an unscheduled meeting request," informed my assistant. "Someone named Nathan Reynolds from Reynolds Solutions. He says he has an interesting partnership proposal." The name hit me like lightning. 3 years had passed since my escape, and now Nathan was here, mere meters away, with no idea who he was about to face. "Schedule him for 4 o'clock, I replied, keeping my voice steady. "And cancel all my appointments for the rest of the day." In the following hours, I oscillated between anxiety and a strange calm. Part of me wanted to run away again, but the Emma Carter I had become no longer fled from anything. I called Robert in Paris. "Nathan's here," I said simply. There was a pause. "Do you want me to catch the next flight?" "No, I need to face this alone." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. But thanks for asking. At 4 sharp, my assistant announced, "Mr. Reynolds is here to see you, Miss Carter." Nathan walked in, older than his 40 years should make him look. Graying hair at his temples, dark circles under his eyes, and a slumped posture that spoke of lost confidence. He was wearing a pricey suit, though slightly disheveled. At first, his eyes didn't recognize me. After all, my hair was different now, my posture was straighter, and my gaze more direct. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Emma Carter, Director of Strategy at Atlantic Meridian. How can I help you?" He began presenting his proposal, something about a software company specialized in maritime logistics. As he spoke, I noticed a gradual spark of recognition in his eyes, growing into confusion. "Excuse me, but have we met somewhere?" I smiled calmly. "Yes, Nathan, we've met." His face went pale. He dropped the folder he was holding, and papers scattered all over the floor. "Emma, but how you disappeared? We looked for you everywhere." "Looked for me?" I kept my voice even, after deliberately abandoning me at a gas station on my birthday. "That's an interesting way to search." He stammered, clearly flustered. "It was just a prank." "We went back to get you 2 hours later, but you were gone. The police were called. Your parents." "My parents have known for a long time that I'm fine, Nathan. They just don't know where I am." A precaution I now see was wise. He somewhat recovered, eyeing my office, the awards on the walls, the panoramic view of the city. "So you work here for Robert Carter?" "I work with Robert Carter. I'm also married to him." Nathan slumped into the chair in front of my desk. "It's impossible. You were just an accountant, you." "I was what you allowed me to be," I interrupted. "Now I'm who I chose to become." For the next few minutes, I explained how I overheard his plan that night in the backyard, how I found out about his affair with Victoria, how I planned my escape while he planned my humiliation. "Were you waiting for 3 years for this moment, Nathan? To see me destroyed and begging to come back?" I shook my head. "Look around you. This is my world now." He seemed to shrink in his chair. "Victoria left me 6 months after you disappeared. The company is on the brink of collapse. I came here because I desperately need that contract." For a brief moment, I felt a pang of satisfaction watching him so vulnerable. But I realized there was no longer any anger in me, just a distant compassion for someone who would never understand what he had lost. "Tell me, Nathan, why should I help you?" "After everything you've done." He looked down at his hands. "I shouldn't. I wouldn't help if I were you." I opened the folder he had brought and skimmed through his proposal. The software seemed mediocre, overpriced, just like many of the ideas he had when we were married. "I can't approve this proposal, Nathan. Not out of revenge, but simply because it isn't good enough for Atlantic." He nodded, defeated. "However," I continued, "I can refer you to Nordsea Shipping, one of our subsidiaries. They need simpler solutions for their smaller operations. If you improve your product, maybe there's room for you there." His eyes showed confusion. "Why would you do that for me?" I stood up, indicating that our meeting was over. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. To show myself that I've completely risen beyond what you did to me." As he got up to leave, I added, "And Nathan, if you mention our past to anyone, this little opportunity will vanish faster than I did at that gas station." After he left, I stared out the window, watching the city below. I expected to feel overwhelming triumph, but instead, I felt something deeper, a sense of closure, of a circle finally completed. That night, over a video call with Robert, I recounted everything. He listened attentively, without interruption. "How do you feel?" he asked when I finished. "Free," I replied, realizing the simple truth behind that word. Completely free. The next week, I returned to Paris. Robert was waiting for me at the airport with a bouquet of lilac, my favorite flowers, not roses like Nathan always insisted on giving me despite my allergy. Welcome home, he said, hugging me. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. As the car took us to our apartment on the All St. Louis, I looked at Paris bathed in the golden light of dusk. This city that embraced me when I was broken, this man who loved me for my strength, not despite my scars, reminded me of how far I'd come.